Welcome to Just Minded My Business Media LLC, where you get information that you can use. I'm your host, Ida Crawford. But before we dive in, subscribe to Just Minded My Business on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Share Just Minded My Business with your family, friends, and colleagues. Engage with us by leaving a review or comment. Your support keeps this podcast going and growing. Visit our website at jmmbmediallc.com to learn how we can support you in getting more visibility on your products and services. So grab a pen and paper and get ready for information that you can use. Welcome to Just Minding My Business Media LLC, where you get information that you can use. I'm your host, Ida Crawford. Wow, I am so glad to bring back Chris Smiles, the cash flow expert and anti-financial advisor. He is a leading authority teaching entrepreneurs and professionals how to get their money working for them today. Chris has used his knowledge not once, but twice to become financially independent, where his passive income exceeded his expenses. Not to mention, paid off his $1 million in debt after the last recession without filing bankruptcy. Chris has been featured in U.S. News, CNN Money, Entrepreneurs on Fire, Bigger Pockets, and has a proven reputation with his company, Money Ripples, getting his clients fast financial results. In fact, his personal clients have increased their cash flow by almost 300 million in the last 12 years. Wow. Welcome back, Chris.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be back.
Yes, indeed. Okay, the first thing we got to talk about, you already know, is the $1 million getting out of debt.
Mm,
That's number one.
yeah, that was horrible.
I'm sure it was. And that's a
Yeah.
big figure to actually be able to get out of.
Yeah. Well, especially because prior to that, I'd actually become financially independent the first time, right? So when people say, how'd you be financially independent twice? Easy. You screwed up the first time. That's how you do it. And that's what I did. I was 28 years old. I was able to quote unquote retire. But I started a new business in 2007. But the business was focused on real estate investors, specifically those that are more flipping properties, which were the very ones that get hit the hardest, fastest during the recession. So that market starts getting hit, right? Our business starts getting hit as a result because nobody's paying us. And on top of that, I cut off streams of income of my own. Plus, my real estate wasn't doing as well either. And all the money that I had, one of the mistakes I did is I threw all my extra cash into my house. And of course, as you all know, especially if there was a higher priced home, you throw money into that, the prices came down, all that equity just disappeared. In fact, I went from having lots of equity stuck in my home, thinking as a mortgage broker, I could just pull it out whenever I want. But instead, I couldn't get it out. It was trapped. And so I helplessly watched the value of my property go down to the point where I eventually, 2009, foreclosed on that property. I actually lost my dream home just a week before my fourth child was born. So I actually negotiated with the guy. I said, hey, listen, can I pay you $2,000 to let me stay here for rent for the next 2 weeks until we can have a baby and then find a new place to live, which we did. And so it was a crazy time. And so yeah, I had a pretty big debt hole to deal with. Now, part of it ended up being that house, but fortunately, some of it was forgiven because, it was my own house. The Homestead Act protects you, so you have to pay some of that negative equity back. But I was selling off everything else I could other than our family minivan that we had and just trying to figure out how to make ends meet. And it was interesting because I really realized that even though I had preached it before, cash flow is everything, right? And what I mean by cash flow is your income's here, your expenses are here, not the other way around. And what got me into that was, of course, not only was our business suffering, like I said, my finances were suffering. I was actually in the hole $15,000 a month. Now, some people might say, oh, that's because you had so much debt. No, the debt happened because I was in the hole so much every month. And not to mention values were lowering in properties and things like that, right? So it wasn't because I was in debt. If I were debt free, I would have still been in the hole each month. And it was just because business expenses and personal expenses were higher than the income that was coming in, which I'm sure some of you have been in before, where you're not even paycheck to paycheck, you're less than that. So naturally, the question is always, how'd you get out of it, Chris? Right? It wasn't easy, obviously. For example, one thing I started doing is I started tracking my money. So instead of just, it's kind of like air, right? You never count the breaths you have until all of a sudden there's not enough of them to take. And that's what happened with my money. Before I had so much money coming in, I was like, oh, who needs to track it? I'm good. There's plenty of money in the account where we got money coming in. Well, when it started drying up, that's when, and I started to notice that my bank balance was shrinking. And then eventually my credit card balances started going up, trying to make myself float every month. That wasn't a good thing. And so I started tracking my money, really seeing where the money was going, get rid of any expenses that really weren't necessary, just getting down to bare bones, not living on rice and beans per se, but really just what are the essentials that we need to have. And so I was starting to really be anal about, where I was spending money. But then that wasn't enough. Like I said, I could be debt free and I was still in the hole, right? So that's half the equation of the expenses. The other half is income. And this is the main secret. Like now paying off debt, like I did do some strategies about how to pay off certain debts. I did like negotiate some debts. Like I let credit cards go late and then I negotiated for like 10, 15% of the balance. I would do that kind of thing to pay them off, but I had to go late. I had to destroy my credit to do that. So I don't recommend it unless it's absolutely necessary. But I was negotiating with credit card lenders and whatnot. Medical bills, they weren't as easy. I actually had a child that was born in that minivan. Funny enough, we didn't make it to the hospital room in time. So we had the baby in the car in the hospital parking lot. So they charged us $63 for freaking delivering a baby in their parking lot. Can you believe that? It's weird.
What?
But
That's
yeah, my wife was the
ridiculous.
doctor on record. They still charged us. But so anyways, so yeah, I mean, it was, I mean, so there's all these expenses and things that came up that we had to deal with. And there was definitely debt, but ultimately it came down to income. How do I increase that? And I started focusing on the thing that got me wealthy the first time, right? It's got me to start making a lot more money the first time, which was focusing not on how do I make more money. Don't ever ask that question. Instead, ask, how can I create more value for more people? How can I add value in their lives, solve problems? How can I become a problem solver, right? Or a solutions provider for people? How would I create a win-win? How do I serve people in a way that money is just a natural byproduct? Because the truth is, the true principle is that dollars follow value. If you want to be able to make more money, figure out how do I provide value for somebody where they want to exchange money to get that in their life. And now the funny thing was in 2007, I was teaching people how to get out of the rat race. But when I was back in it, I felt like a total fraud, right? Because why should I be teaching people how to get out of the rat race if I'm back in the rat race once more? So I stopped doing that. And I started teaching people how to get resourceful, how to find money, because that's what I was doing. Now, I wouldn't tell them I'm flat broke, right? I mean, that's not exactly the best marketing strategy in your business. But I did tell them, I said, listen, because a lot of them would say, Chris, this sounds great. I would love to pay you. I just don't have the money because the recession's hard on me right now. I said, well, what if I could help you find the money? Because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, look, your situation is way better than mine. I wish I had your situation. So I would tell them, if I can help you find the money, would you pay me? And they said yes. And so I started doing that. I started showing people how to find and free up cash, whether it be from their businesses, from taxes, tax savings, creative ways to pay off debt, things like that, tracking their money, whatever it might be, to help them find the money to eventually pay me. And so I started to do that to a point where it started to create a life of its own. It actually rescued our business from bankruptcy, essentially. And it started catching fire, especially in the dental and the chiropractic communities. And that was the key, is like I just had to last long enough to get to the point where it got to the right people and it caught fire. But it took me, I mean, it was really a good 2-year period that I was struggling. It was hard. Collector calls every day. And that's the other thing too. And maybe you're going to ask me this. I just keep rambling. I should probably let you ask these questions, but
No, go right
um,
ahead. This is so important because people need to feel you was there. They need to know you were there.
yeah, well, like, because the hardest thing wasn't, I mean, the financial part was hard. Don't get me wrong. There's no doubt when you have a big debt hole, it can be overwhelming, right? There was a lot of mornings I woke up panicking. I would go to bed late at night because I'd stay up late at night worrying about how I was going to pay the bills, how I'm going to provide for my family, because I was the only one working, and I had a growing family. Like I said, that fourth child was born the week after we foreclosed on our dream home. So I mean, I was had a very young growing family, 4 kids in 5 years, and in fact, even my wife at that time, she even said, "Hey, do we need to move out? Do I need to move out with the kids to my sister's basement so you can figure your crap out?" Like, no, like I need you. Like I need support. I don't need more proof that I suck. Okay. That I'm not a
Right.
man providing for my family. Um, and on top of that, multiple times a day, there was collector calls coming in to the point I just stopped answering my phone. I knew exactly what the numbers were and who they were coming from, because even my Mercedes, I turned that sucker in and I said, "Here, take the keys because you're going to take it from me anyways at some point. So just take it now." So I drove it into the dealership to give back. They auctioned it off, and then I owed 30 grand after the auction compared to what I owed on the loan. Right. The funny thing is, the collector would call me. I remember the collector said, he's like, "Well, can you pay this back?" I said, "No, I can't. Obviously, that's why you're calling me, because if I could pay it, you wouldn't be calling me right now." He said,
Right.
"Well, can you pay at least $1,200 a month?" I said, "My payment before was less than $1,100 a month. So what makes you think I could pay 1,200 a month?" And
Right.
he verbally got in my face. He wasn't there, but he verbally got in my face. He said, "You know what? You're the reason why this country is failing right now. Why we're in this economic mess we're in. You're the reason that's happening." I said, "Who did come off tell me that? I hired plenty of people, give people jobs. I paid hundreds of thousands of people just like you. So don't give me that crap." So I mean, I was mad, but I was mad partly because, I mean, not what he said was true, but I was mad because I felt worthless, right? I had hidden behind my stuff. I hid behind my nice little McMansion. I hid behind my Mercedes, showing that as my worth, but I felt inside worthless. And
Mm,
so when all that's stripped away, you're just left with you. And at that point, I had to really realize, I'm like, well, am I okay with that? Does that make me any less of a person? Am I worth any less? And I
mm,
realized that I did have value, regardless of what my bank balance showed or what it didn't show, because it was a negative number most of the time. Whatever it showed, it still didn't define who I was. And I had to battle that every day. I even had a battle waking up. And so what I would do in the mornings, I would do my workouts. I would first thing first, as I would get up and do a morning ritual or morning routine. Tony Robbins calls his the hour of power, right? Some people call it power hour. Some people call it morning ritual. Miracle morning, whatever you want to call it. I was doing my own where I focused on my I call it the 3 E's: exercise, education, and enlightenment. I would exercise because if I try to do enlightenment like praying or reading the Bible and things like that, I'd fall asleep right out of bed. So I had to exercise, get my blood pumping. Then I do enlightenment, even meditation and things like that, prayer and whatnot. And then education. I would read books and try to get inspired and learn new things to be able to help deliver more value so I could make more money. So I was constantly educating and trying to enlighten myself and also try to exercise and stay in and really get a good win first thing in the morning when I felt like a loser going to bed at night. And that's what I needed. I needed that win. And so I started doing that. And I started to tell myself there are no accidents, that everything happens for a reason, that therefore, in fact, Napoleon Hill says this in Think and Grow Rich. He says that, and I'm paraphrasing because I'm probably not going to say it exactly correctly. He says that, the pretty much for every adversity you have is a seed for an equal or greater opportunity. So whenever things got really bad, I remember thinking like Rocky and Rocky 3. Remember when he was fighting Mr. T, and he's getting punched in the face and they're like, he's getting pummeled out there. He's like, no, he's getting angry. He get hit. He's like, that ain't so bad. That ain't so bad. He keeps saying that over and over. So the worse that I felt, the harder that things seemed to be, I kept thinking, man, if the opportunity on the other side of this, the light at the end of the tunnel is equal or greater than this, it's going to be dang awesome, especially on those bad days. I'm like, I cannot wait to see how amazing this is going to be at the end because today sucks, right? And and that's kind of how I try to do it. I try to have that little ember of faith. Really, it was almost like running on fumes in your gas tank, right? It's on empty, the light's on, the needle's buried, but somehow you're still rolling into that gas station. That's what I felt like with my faith. I was just rolling in just long enough to make it. And I read 2 key books that really helped me through this. If you're struggling right now, I recommend at least one of the two. One of them, maybe not so much. The first one was Three Feet from Gold by Greg Reed and Sharon Lechter, both friends of mine. A great book. It's like the Think and Grow Rich for the 21st century, but it gives like real life examples of people that were right at the border of where they could have quit, but they didn't. And then that's when everything exploded for them, right? Everything became better. So it's that turnaround, that getting through those hard times. So that kind of gave me a little bit more inspiration. And then the second book I read, which you may or may not want to read yourself, but I would call it one of his more quote unquote humble books. It was by Donald Trump called Never Give Up, right? This is before he was president. It basically talks about his failures and the things he had to overcome. And
Mm-hmm.
I remember one of the key things I got from that book was that he would, if there was 20 negative things, he would find the one positive, which now actually seeing him as president, I can kind of see how that followed him along. I can kind of see that attitude he had there because, sometimes he would ignore reality. Like, dude, you need a reality check, right? Like you're living in la la land. And you're like, oh, he's doing the same thing that helped him through hard times. Okay, I get it. But
Right.
like I did the same thing. Like sometimes there were really bad days. I could just say, I'm breathing. At least I'm walking. I can do something today.
Yes.
It was literally like that because there were some really hard days. But I was holding out one good thing. And I realized as I shifted that energy and I shifted those beliefs, it got me through just long enough to see the light, not just be a light at the end of the tunnel, but then the light appear. And I'm at the end of that tunnel. Things start turning around in our company. Like I said, we got into that dental and chiropractic markets, and then everything just exploded. We went from nearly bankrupt to like making 5 million the next year in revenue.
Wow.
And that's the thing is like it wasn't just because I was talented. It was because I just didn't give up. And if there's anything
Yes.
you take away from my story is just, I mean, sometimes it makes sense to give up. Sometimes it's not necessarily give up, but you just need to take a different door. I did that. I took different doors. I wasn't going down the path that I predicted in 2007, but the path I took was better. And even if it forced me through that door, still it led me to exactly where I needed to go. And it's created really the life I have now where, I am retired, or able to retire. I don't retire. I hate retiring, but I get bored. But I'm at the point where I have more than enough money coming in that I don't have to work. And I have a company that's successful and it's blessing other people's lives. And I think that's the real purpose is that how do
Yeah.
we go about blessing more lives in our business?
Yes. And that's to me, that's how you receive your blessings by blessing other people. Because at the end of
That's
the
right.
day, we're here for others. We're not here necessarily for ourselves. For sure.
Exactly.
What an amazing story. Because it do get rough. I know. I mean, I've gone through my hills and my valleys and not seeing how what's going to happen around the corner, and
Mhm.
you just have to have that faith that is you're going
Yeah,
to come out okay.
that's right.
You
You
just have
really
to
do.
have that faith, and that's the truth. That
Yeah.
faith
And the
is
truth is you always have, haven't you? Like you've always
yes,
survived whatever challenge you've had. You've made it to this point. You're already 100% success rate from that standpoint. You're here, you're alive today. Use that as leverage to continue to move forward as well.
absolutely, absolutely. Ah, wow, this is you just hit it on the nose. You just hit it on the nose. I gotta take a minute to breathe. That was powerful, Chris. Very powerful. So, multiple streams of income. Why is that important?
Well, the one thing I realized, like I mentioned before, is cash flow creates freedom, right? Because
Yes.
when more money coming in than what's going out, you have options. And when you have more options in life, you have freedom. One thing that I know that 2020 brought to a harsh reality for me was when all of a sudden they said, hey, only essential businesses can be open, right? So I had several clients that all of a sudden by force, they couldn't work anymore. They weren't making money.
Right.
And borrowing from the government isn't always the best option, right? Because it's like the deal with the devil sometimes.
Right.
So of course, the good thing was that a lot of those clients also had other streams of income coming from other things. Like we do a lot with investments like real estate investing. We don't trust the stock market because the stock market can go up or down. It's like my bipolar ex-girlfriend, it just can't be trusted. And
Yes.
so I go for things that I know are consistent. They give me consistent income and they have real assets to back them up. And that is save people for sure. I mean, I have one client that he works in Hollywood and Hollywood is one of those places that shuts down all the time, right? I mean, COVID shut it down forever. And then the writer's strike of 2023 shut it down for a good chunk of that year too. The
Yeah.
thing that he kept telling me is, Chris, he's like, I'm not hitting my goals as fast as I want to create freedom. He's like, but I still had $4,000 a month coming in when I only need 4,200 a month to live on. So he says the good thing is because I have another stream of income coming in, I've only had to dip into savings about 200 bucks a month, which when I encourage people to have at least 6 to 12 months of savings, he had more than enough to last years if that were the case. And so he still had money coming in. So unlike other guys that were working in Hollywood that were just waiting for the first job that came their way, even if it was a bad job, he didn't do that. He was able to sit in peace and abundance and be able to say, you know what? I'm going to wait for the right job when it comes along because I'm okay. And I
Mhm.
think everybody, whether you're a business owner or you're a W-2 employee, it doesn't matter. You need multiple streams of income coming in, even outside of your business, to make sure that even if you become quote unquote non-essential in your job or your business, at least they can't stop you from being able to provide for your family and have that life that you want. You become work optional. You work because you want to, not because you have to.
Absolutely. I call it plan A, B, C, and D. That's what I call it because you just
That's
never
right.
know. And sometimes, a lot of times, things are out of your control. You have
Mhm.
no control. COVID was a prime example of
Yeah.
out of your control. Who knew that was coming? Nobody.
Yeah.
Wow. So, Chris, if people want to work with you, how do they do so?
Yeah, I always recommend people follow us first to make sure you actually like us, you know? So, and we like you, to be honest. So, the best way to do that, you can go to moneyripples.com. There's plenty of information there, moneyripples.com. But we also have the Money Ripples podcast on YouTube or iTunes, wherever you follow podcasts as well.
Okay. So originally you was a financial advisor, correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
All right. So why did you leave that career?
Because it doesn't work, is what I found out.
Okay.
Um, Sadly, I found out when I was actually my dad. I was in the industry for about 4 years at this point. My dad said, "Well, aren't you going to become my financial advisor at some point too?" And I said, "Well, sure. Let's sit down." And I never thought he would say that because he was the kind of guy. He was always very, very cheap. Yeah, he would say he's frugal. We all knew he was cheap. He was a tightwad, right? I mean, he's the kind of guy you stick a penny up there and Lincoln squeals in return. So like he was the kind of guy that saved everything, spent nothing. He just told you to save, right? Pay off debt. And so I sit down with him. He had been saving his 401k for decades. He had paid off his house early. He was totally debt free. He says, Chris, I'm 61. I want to retire. How can I do it? Because this job is going to kill me if I don't. I looked at it. I said, Dad, if you want to retire today, you better hope you die in 5 years because that's when you're going to run out of money. And he said, well, what do I do then? I said, I don't know. You did everything right, according to what I teach as a financial advisor. Like we teach people to be cheap, save everything, pay off their debt, and somehow magically you're going to be free. And you've done it, but it's just not enough.
Hmm.
And so I was bugged by that. And eventually it was at that point, I met with a friend who was in real estate investing. He said, well, Chris, how many of your clients are financially free where they don't worry about money or running out of money in retirement? I said, well, none of them. They all worry about that. Okay, Chris. Well, that's great. How about this? How many of you guys as financial advisors are financially free, not off the commissions you're earning, but actually doing these investments? And when I was really honest with myself, and I'm looking at myself as well as like 100 people around our office, there's some of them working there since the late 1970s at that point, and none of them could retire. And I said, well, none. There's your problem, Chris. That's it. He's like, but there's lots of us real estate investors that can retire in our 20s and 30s. And so when I started to take that matrix red pill and I went to the other world to see the other side of what you can do in real estate where you can make higher income with less risk, I realized, why am I teaching this junk? Like this, it's already been proven not to work. By the way, Fidelity came out with their statistics. Only 1.5% of their clients have at least $1 million. And of those people that have $1 million, 35% said, quote, it'll take a miracle for me to be able to retire.
Oh, wow.
Miracle. That means only 1% thinks they're okay. Think about that. That means, I mean, if you look at Google reviews for a restaurant you want to eat at, if you had 99 one-star reviews and 1 5-star review, we just say, oh, that's got to be a good restaurant. No,
No,
but
you
that's what
wouldn't.
financial advising is, a 1% success rate, if that. And so when I finally fully embraced it and was willing to accept it, even though it meant turning away from my pocketbook, my career that I built over several years, I realized my integrity was more important than that career, and I left in 2006. And so glad I never looked back, because I mean, that's what led me to be able to find better options, things that actually got me to be able to retire when I was 28, because I did it differently. I didn't follow the mainstream. I did what's actually worked for tens of millions of us, using real assets like real estate to be able to create passive income where we're work optional.
So when you work with people, what does that look like? Do you do like coaching or group
Mhm.
coaching? How's that work?
Yeah, we actually have people that hire us. We do have some group coaching as well, but we do have people that hire us one-on-one to, we're not investment advisors. We never tell people they should invest here or invest there.
Right.
But we do help them strategize, like how to be able to find where to get their money out of prison, so to speak, so that they can use that to invest to generate passive income in things like different various kinds of real estate or real estate backed type of investments. And so we really are more strategists and connectors, right? We don't raise money, we don't invest it, but we do help people figure out where's the best use they can use of this money, and where are some people that have good track records that have been around for at least the last 12, 15 years. They've probably either lost hair and or gray hair like me, as a result of the things they went through that made them better investors, versus the kid that shows up there 25 years old saying, I'll take your money. We don't want those people. And so we try to really connect them with people that we've kind of either invested with ourselves or vetted, and then they can invest it however they want. And the great thing is we got a very, very high success rate. I mean, really 100% of our clients that actually work with us make passive income. They at least create minimum 500 to $1,000 a month of passive income.
And that's awesome. And that is really awesome. And because you've been through the trenches and you're doing it, I trust you. I
Yeah.
trust that you can help people actually do that. So again, how do people connect with you?
Yeah. Go to moneyripples.com or follow our podcast, the Money Ripples Podcast, wherever you follow podcasts.
Yes, absolutely. Well, this is kind of like off the record here. Um, I heard you were the world championship ballroom dance team. T-
Yeah.
Tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about that.
Yeah, so for my junior and senior year, I transferred to a school called Utah Valley State College at that time. Now it's Utah Valley University. They and Brigham Young University alternate whenever they show up to the World Championships, and so we actually, our team, our dance team, our ballroom dance team, actually won the World Championships a couple years in a row in Liverpool, England, or sorry, Blackpool, England, not Liverpool, Blackpool.
Oh, okay. Nice. That's a nice twist. So you like ballroom dancing?
Yep. And my Facebook feed even shows it to me now. Now there's all those little shorts that show up there. They start showing me all these ballroom dancers, and I realize, man, I wasn't that good. I see some of these videos. I'm like, man, I thought I was pretty good. I was one of the nation's top amateurs, but oh my goodness, like seeing how the dancers are even 20 years later blows my mind. It makes me miss it a little bit.
Yeah, and I normally see them when I go on cruises. It's like
Uh-huh.
they are really in high performance on cruises,
Oh yeah,
big
absolutely. Yeah, I've
time.
had several friends do that.
Yeah, I like to watch them, and it be older people, and they be rocking it. I'll be like, I know that's right. I want to be like you when I grow up. For sure. Wow. So your podcast, how do people connect to that? What is it? Your podcast.
Yeah, Money Ripples podcast you can find on YouTube. We have the Money Ripples channel that's there. And like, iTunes or wherever you find podcasts, Spotify, I don't know, all those places you can find it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
actually in its 10th season now, so it's been around a while.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Yes, your story is amazing. You're very humble. And it's like, people want to hear that you messed up, so to speak. You know how
I'm a
they,
good mess up, that's for sure.
they want to hear that you messed up and then you fixed it. So that way okay, if he messed up, then he can definitely help me fix my mess up.
That's right.
And that's what people really want to hear. So thank you so much, Chris. It is always, always a pleasure. And you have really made my day today. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you to our guests and you, our valued audience, for stopping by. We truly appreciate you. Many blessings to you and yours.